Hi. Here in Sydney, on New Year's Day 2025, it's very quiet. Most people are sleeping in. No traffic on the road. Uncannily quiet, really, for a city the size of Sydney. Yes, coming up to 8 a.m. And it reminds me of a New Year's Day which occurred 71 years ago. 71 years ago, I was a 28-year-old, yes, I'm 88 now, a 28-year-old air radio operator working at Madang Airport on the northern coast of Papua-New Guinea. It was quiet then too. I'd come on at 2:45 in the morning. We never worked night shifts in New Guinea because there was no night flying. So I'd come on and watch to get all the weather reports and so forth at 2:45. And around about 7 o'clock, another man came into the office, and there was an understanding that on New Year's Day, because it was so quiet, I'd be able to slip away home, not staying until 10 a.m. as expected. But all of that changed. As I said, it was very quiet. Nothing moving on the airport at all, not even a dog. All the old DC-3s, all the Bristol freighters, all the old-fashioned prop planes we had in those days, all lined up quietly in the various parking bays. And me and this other fellow sitting in the air radio room wondering what we were going to do with ourselves on such a quiet day. In front of us was the air radio console with the speakers on. We were sitting there chatting away when, to our surprise, out of the loudspeaker came a voice. "Madang, Madang, this is Foxtrot Romeo India taxiing at Sissano for Aitape." Well, this was a surprise. An aircraft flying on New Year's Day? Well, I pressed the button and said Foxtrot Romeo India, which meant I acknowledged the call, and we went back to chatting again. And then my friend Kenny, he turned to me and said, "Ken," he said, "Tom, you did hear that Foxtrot Romeo India call taxiing, didn't you?" Now, on the strength of that, on the strength of what I said to him, the whole day changed. I said, "Yes, I did." So we wrote down on a little piece of cardboard in the active bay, Foxtrot Romeo India taxiing at 8:05 local time. Now, any aircraft that calls taxiing is expected to call with their departure message within a few minutes later. That didn't happen. So we called the aircraft. "Foxtrot Romeo India, this is Madang. Do you read?" No reply. "Foxtrot Romeo India, this is Madang on 5499. Do you read? Over." Still no answer. We're starting to worry. About 8 minutes had passed since he called taxiing. He still didn't reply. By now, other air ground stations, because we had a big HF network, started to call the aircraft. Foxtrot Romeo India, this is Rabaul. Do you read Rabaul on 5499 or 8939? No reply. Foxtrot Romeo India, Moresby reading. At 10 past, that is 10 minutes after the aircraft called taxiing, we declared what they call an uncertainty phase. An uncertainty phase. But we realised that he was going down to a little place called Aitape, which was virtually not much more than a plantation, a small village. And when he got there, perhaps if he had something wrong with his radio, he would call us on Aitape's radio and let us know he'd arrived. But when the time elapsed, there was no call from Aitape. We now upgraded it to an alert phase, and now we had to phone the boss. So that quiet New Year's Day suddenly became very busy. Staff were called in, the search and rescue room was opened, pilots were called, planes started to rev up. In the search and rescue room, maps were drawn, lines where the aircraft departed from, where he was going to, and so forth. And thus began one of the busiest days of my life. Extra staff called in. Way back in Port Moresby, they got wind of it. The press wanted to get onto the story. And so it went on. One of the busiest days of our lives in the air radio room. At twice a day, various ground stations, plantations and so forth would call in with their weather reports and the conditions of their airstrips, because in New Guinea it rained a lot at night. And if an airstrip got enough rain on it, or too much rain, they would close the airstrip. No planes allowed to land. So we got these messages coming in. Still no news on the missing aircraft. The day rolled by. Now we knew that last light was about 6:30. If he hadn't been found by 6:30 that night, we'd have to start the search and rescue again in the morning. And then, would you believe it, about 10 to 6 that afternoon, a call came. Oh, this is Sister Agnes, or whatever her name was, calling from Aitape. We have 2 native boys just came in a moment ago, dragging a very looking bedraggled pilot with them. Yes, the pilot, because he'd been alone, was saved. How did it happen? Well, later we were to learn that the plane doing its takeoff, maybe the pilot was a bit hungover from drink, who knows, we can't say. As he turned over the water, he dipped the end of his wing into that water. The plane tumbled over and over, he was thrown out, the plane sank, and he was washed out to sea. Lucky was he indeed that a mile offshore, 2 natives in a canoe were spearing fish when they happened to see him bobbing by. It took them all day to bring him in, find out where he was from, and get him to Aitape to make that call. So, New Year's Day, 1964, one of the most memorable days of my life. And as I sit here in the quiet of New Year's Day 2025, that story came back to me. I hope you enjoyed it.